Hey Dom.
Hey Jenna. Hey Jenna. We're
Um,
we're
what?
back.
I know we're back. We're back. We had a nice summer break and we're back to podcasting.
Yeah. It's been, I have to admit, I'm just trying to get used to this again. I'm like, I was asking, I was like, do I look okay right now? I don't feel like I look okay, but whatever. I'm like, it's a goddamn podcast. Most people are not watching us.
Well, actually, you never know. You have to believe in growth in order to get there.
True. True. Thank you for those words of optimism
Oh, I've got
and
lots of
forward.
words of optimism, which is weird for me.
Oh, Jenna. So
Well,
how's the yeah, God.
I was gonna say, are you ready to actually dive in?
Yes, I am.
All right, then let's start the show. Hi, I'm Jenna.
And I'm Dom. You know what's funny? Not long ago we were both breaking news. Now we're
Breaking unemployment records.
exactly just like thousands of other journalists who've been laid off from newsrooms across the country.
Yeah, and after the shock wore off, we kept asking ourselves, what the hell do we do now?
And over many, many cups of coffee,
And maybe a few drinks.
we realized we had a unique opportunity here. Why not pull back the curtain on what's really happening in American media?
Right? I mean, we've spent years in this industry seeing how stories get made or don't, and now we can actually talk about it.
And trust me, there's a lot to talk about. From local news disappearing to social media reshaping journalism, we'll break it all down.
And look, we're not here to lecture anybody. We just want to help make sense of the information that we're getting and maybe have some much needed fun along the way.
So, whether you're glued to the news, just trying to figure out what's real in your feed, or curious about the future of media, come hang with us.
Welcome to Laid Off and Looking, a podcast where two journalists
Are taking a critical look at American media. So, Jenna, how was your summer?
I don't know. It was like everything and nothing. Like first and foremost, I've got my little freelancing hustles that I've been hustling and shamelessly plugging my Substack as many places as I possibly can and trying to build a social media following on everyone's favorite platform, TikTok. And also, learning how to shore us up behind the scenes and sort of
hmm
build a business and all that other stuff. Like it was a lot and nothing all at once. Probably because I didn't go anywhere.
it's kind of difficult to feel secure enough to go anywhere when when you're still trying to figure shit out, don't you think? I mean, I know for me that's a big deal. Is the fact of feeling unsure of certain things. You do need a break, though. You do need to get away. But you have a sanctuary, I feel like, where you live.
I do, and actually, I completely forgot we weren't even in gallery mode. That's how rusty I am. Yeah, no, I do have a sanctuary. I'm very much in love with my Hudson Valley home and am doing everything I can to stay my black ass here. And so, yeah, that makes everything, I think, a lot more palatable, is that I do genuinely enjoy where I am and how I live. And which I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for the summer for me, is
hmm
that I've actually built a life that I really, really enjoy. How
And
about
that's
you?
important. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really like, sometimes it takes time to get to that place. Not everybody does. So that's a really huge accomplishment.
Yeah, not everybody does, I think is really the an important point to make. But how was your summer?
It was, it was, there was a lot going on and there wasn't. It was
Yep.
like, it was both worlds. You know what I mean? It was kind of like a lot going on a personal level. And then I think, on a professional level was really a time for me for really unplugging a little bit and trying to think about where things go. Like that's the thing, like, and also the podcast. I mean, the thing was, we always checked in with each other. We were always working on, of course, we would always like every week or so, we would be like, hey, what's going on? And we would talk about what we had new for the season. We were game planning for how we want to go for this season and taking
Hmm.
it to the next level. Um, so yeah, but I mean, summer went by really quickly, and that's the thing that I was like, I feel like it was honestly like it was just May last week, and now it's like it's already September and we're back in the game, which I love being back in the game, but it just feels like it went so fast.
I feel like that's just a function of getting older, though. Like when you're a kid, summer lasts forever. And I was talking to my sister because my niece obviously was out of school. She's 9. And I was like, how long is summer? Because my recollections as a child was that there were parts of summer that just dragged on. And like, I remember like in between maybe camp or day camp or something being bored and all this other stuff. And my sister was like, it's 8 weeks. And I was like, that's it. She's like, yeah, no, it's only 8 weeks. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I don't recall as a kid. I think I always summer always flew by because I always thought of it in the sense of you'd go back to school, you're like, oh shit, I got to read. You always had like that reading list that you had to get into, and I would never read my books up until last minute because I would just procrastinate. Big
I love
shock,
a
I know.
deadline. That's always my thing.
But so much has also been happening in the industry too. I know, right? Like for us, like we've been talking about, like there was always stuff within the journalism world that's been going on.
Well, I will say that for me, even with all of the different changes that were going on within the journalism slash media world, which I think we were both trying to follow,
Hmm.
and sometimes it was just like I can't keep up with all of these new updates and what's happening in
Hmm.
this controversy and who said what and left here and started that and etc. But at the same time, I found myself because I've also been doing a lot of networking and I'm not the same which this could sound ridiculous. I'm not the same person that I was anymore, but I'm not. Like I'm not when I first came into the industry, I was very much a young, hungry, bordering on desperately hungry journalist who wanted to prove myself that this was something that I could do. And if I could just get an opportunity and somebody would just give me a chance, I could do it, man. And I was doing this and I was doing that. And I was like extra and yes, I'll do it. And I'll be there. And you don't even have to ask twice. And like all of this stuff of sort of sacrificing myself on this altar of see me, validate me.
Hmm.
And somewhere along the lines this summer, I was just like, I don't think I want to hunt or search for that exterior validation anymore, or at least not in the ways that I was going for it.
You have, I mean, you have more growth, you have more experience. Those things all make you see value in yourself. That, I mean, you have to put that value on yourself. Other people, yeah, they can sort of, others, like you said, external validation can kind of come across and tell you what they want, what kind of paycheck they want to put out there for you. But ultimately, we have to be the ones who see what are we worth, right? I mean, I feel like also just in terms of titles,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
you
Uh,
had a pretty prestigious title.
I- yeah, but I also think like, what do titles really mean anymore nowadays? Like, what does the job, I mean, in terms of, with journalism, it's so going, there's so much change happening, whether it's in terms of digital or, whether you're going on TikTok or whether you're going on any type of different platform, like it, so much has really changed. And I think the biggest thing is just knowing as somebody who's a creative, somebody who's creating this, and how do you like, what do you want to create? What do you believe in? And I think with journalism, I think a lot of us or people who work in this field are really, I know for me, trying to still figure that part out of where do you fall in it. And it isn't always easy. You know what I mean? Trying to work that out. And also really, I know for me too, the whole thing of enjoying the independence, but with that independence comes the fact of like, how do you monetize? How do you make money? How do you make a steady living while still being independent and being somebody who is not part of necessarily like you want to have having that steady paycheck comes with the fact that you have to also keep, you might have to make some sacrifices along the way.
Well,
And I
you're
think
on
that that's
somebody
sort of
else's
changed.
schedule.
I mean,
That's
I
at least the
remember,
thing.
well, I mean, but even when you work in a newsroom, it's like you have those early morning meetings and you're hustling to go grab, go get that next guy. It's just a difference, I think, in how we see. the industry moving and how we're all trying to figure that out. And again, there's been so many changes that it really does get kind of, it can be a little complicated.
Well, I will say that it's interesting working independently, the work-life balance that I've cut out for myself right now, because basically, since, we're effectively building a small business here, there's not a day that I don't do something. Like I'm never really, it's very rare that I'm just like, I'm just not doing anything. Unless, of course, my body's like, I'm shutting down whether you are or not. But at the same time, there is, a I'm able to set more of my schedule. And the way I see it, as long as I still make my deliverables, what I do with my
Hmm.
time in between is kind of up to me. And I'm really coming to like that of not, just like, where are you? What are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you? What are you doing? Well, what about like, if we have a meeting where I need to check in with somebody, then I'll make that meeting and check in with somebody. And if I need to have content prepared and delivered, then I will make sure that that happens. But I will say not having that level of control over my life, and your work life is a big part. That's 40 hours out of your week,
Yeah,
not including like the time you're commuting and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's a big chunk of your
totally.
life. And not having that control over it has been freeing in a weird way. Even though I'm probably going to say I work more now than I did then. It's just I work more now on my terms.
And the thing is that does come, of course, with like, right, with that, there comes sometimes lack of stability. Things aren't as stable as
Oh no, I don't
ordinarily.
make anywhere near as much money as I used to, even though we are working on that. But that is also a factor and something that I think also keeps me going in terms of being willing to do as much as I do and like, meet with this person and email and try and call and all this other stuff is to begin to figure out because it's not just creating the content. We both know how to do that. It's now also building a business, which is this is new territory.
I mean, that is, and it isn't, I think finding that, figuring that part out is really another whole nother part of the game,
Oh yeah.
because there are so many other people out there doing this and wanting to do the exact same thing. And everybody's just trying to figure out. And guess what? I truly believe that everybody can exist in this world, in this, this kind of like ecosystem of, new journalism that we're heading into. But really, it's also not even just about journalism. There are a lot of content creators out there who sort of delve in this world too, of talking about topics or talking about news and everybody, it's about how do you figure out how to monetize, really make money off of this. And like you said too, I think you can still work really hard. Um, in many ways, sometimes even harder than you did for a company because the hours are not, the hours kind of are flex,
Yeah,
right?
well,
You
there's
kind
a
of pick
lot
and
of
choose.
things that, if you're working for a company, somebody else dealt with. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? Now you're the person who deals with all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do end up because you take on many, many, many more hats. But again, there's something satisfying every time I make a new connection or figure out something new that I'm just like, we're getting closer. I feel like we're doing something.
Yeah. I think there's a part of me too though that gets a little I don't know. I think it's funny. I mean, I do enjoy talking. I'm sure people who know me just as you do know that I like to talk and I can talk a lot. But at the same point, there can be a point where I get really tired of this, of the whole issue of hustle culture, or always feeling like there's a price being put on how often you are, whether it is on being on LinkedIn or the whole thing. I do understand the whole process of, you know, networking and all those things. I also think though, um, for many of us too, it's like networking and those types of things have to be done in a smart way so that you're networking with the right types of people. You're
Oh
creating a
yeah.
culture where you really also are using your time to the best of your ability so you're not wasting time also on people who aren't going to be there because there's a lot of people out there who just want to know what people are doing and aren't really there to help you along the way. They're really more so of people who are just there to kind of they just want to be in the know. And I think that's a part of of it all for me too. It's connecting with the right people who really can be of help to you, and also you're connecting with people who you share similar values with, so that it makes sense. That connection makes sense,
Hmm.
and it's all part of this industry that is really, again, it's it's kind of wild when I think back, Jenna, to when we first were laid off to where we are now, and seeing that back then AI wasn't even as it was there, but it didn't have the same impact, I think, on the industry as it has by now. And it's been really interesting watching how all of that has added to the culture and where we are at this moment in terms of media, news media, journalism.
Oh, completely. Well, actually, since you brought up AI, that's actually going to be one of the focuses of this upcoming third season. Can you believe it? Like three
I
seasons.
know.
And that is going to be, I mean, I think our first season, we were still absorbing the impact
Yep.
of the shock of the layoff. And then, the second season, it was a little bit really where we were starting to find our voice. But I'll never forget, I think it was like the end of the spring, early summer, where you reached out and you were just like, listen, I'm talking to people, and all anybody can talk about is what role is AI going to have in not just all of our lives, but specifically in journalism and media. And so we decided that we're going to make I mean, not for every single episode,
Right.
because I don't think it's going to fit with every conversation that we have, but that is going to be a through line for this coming season is how does AI begin to impact journalism? And is it something that, some people have already said, oh, this job is cooked and this is going to be gone and et cetera? Can machines really do what people do? There are some aspects of journalism that I could see a computer doing. Unfortunately, like with a lot of other industries, people are saying that those are the entry level positions, which just makes getting into this business that much harder. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that I'm sorry, only a person could do. Like, as I think Rick Rubin, the
Mhm.
infamous producer, once said, AI doesn't have, it's a machine. It doesn't have a point of view. It can't, push a guest to ask or to pick up on nuance or things like that, are all important aspects of reporting.
The interest for me with AI, aside from the fact of there's a lot of conflicted feelings about it, of course. There are people who think it should not be used whatsoever in the arts, in journalism, people just are against it. And then there are people who are embrace it fully and think it should be everywhere. And if a job is being taken over by AI, it's kind of, well, then you should figure out what you want to do with your career that's different. I think both of us sort of find ourselves like in the middle of like seeing a technology that can be helpful,
Oh,
but also
yeah.
at the same point having also respect for the skill sets of, and in particular for what we're talking about here, journalists, um, the writing, the connecting with people. But these are all things that are being tapped into. AI is being tapped into how being used for interviews. There are people experimenting with hosts who are AI, who are
I've
doing interviews for
seen that
people.
that like of the jobs that they're suggesting that AI will take over, like TV broadcaster is one of them. Now again, I'm a child of the 80s. My first thought was who wants to get their news from Max Headroom, but we shall see.
And I think that this is where you kind of listen, we're not experts in this, but we're kind of asking those questions. That was the whole point of what we were saying. This kind of ongoing series throughout the year is going to be kind of like, where are we going with this? And what sounds ethical? What maybe sounds kind of fishy? What sounds like it could be, is it an abuse of a system? I think those are the questions to me that I'm really kind of curious about is along the way, like, I don't know. We don't have all the answers. As opposed to some people who love to seem like they go out there and they have all the answers to everything. It's like, we don't. And I think we just
Well,
want
the
to
fact
talk
is
to people.
nobody does. Like even the people who are just like, I know, no, you don't. Nobody really has all the answers, especially not with this weird, brave new world that we're all entering.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that so that's the AI, the whole issue of artificial intelligence and where does it fit is really I just can't wait to sort of see where it goes because there are aspects of it that I think are so helpful. And then there are aspects of that are frightening of what it could actually do and replace. So I
Yeah. And what like, a cash-strapped newsroom can find themselves needing to rely on computers to do. Like I'll be perfectly transparent. Yeah, we use AI to transcribe our conversations because that is a tedious task, something that I used to have to do when I first started. But there just isn't time. There isn't
no,
time. And so, but I will say also that it's not something that you just rely on blindly. Like you still have to go back and make sure that it got the words correct or, like names were spelled correct or that's actually what was said. Because I can't remember which creator it was, but one of the guys who's behind, maybe it was Sam Bankman or something, was just like, yeah, the system gets stuff wrong. And I'm like, well, that's great. I love that this technology that's being pushed into everyone's lives is something that's also like, oh, yeah, no, it's wrong sometimes.
but that's honest. I think like, um, uh, did you mean Sam Altman? Because I
There
mean
you go.
a
Sam
chat.
Altman. I knew it
You're
was
talking
one of
about
the
chat.
Sams. Yes, I'm
So yeah,
thinking
it's one of
chat.
the Sams. But
It's one of the Sams.
I think that's because they're it's so funny to me that you have people who sort of, AI was and is the answer. Then once it became, um, once I think you have this aspect of it, it's exploded even more than anybody ever imagined. And I think that now there's almost like this, hey everyone, let's just also keep in mind AI is occasionally wrong. It hallucinates. It straight up hallucinates sometimes. So it, but again, it can also be so helpful in terms of explaining certain things. And like you said, how we use it in terms of transcribing, using things in terms of researching. Um, but you still have to put the work in. I think what we're both used to is the
Oh,
fact that
completely.
we both check up, we fact check, just because I've seen this before, where it gives me an article. It's like the article doesn't even exist, and it's like, boo boo, you screwed this up. But listen, that's what happens. It also happens with humans too. People
Yeah,
sometimes screw up too.
that's
Oh,
also
this
true.
was
That's what retractions and corrections are for.
yes, if you're legitimate, and journalist or you're a legitimate news company, yes, you're right. That's what it is there for. So you should that I mean, plenty of places do that. And then those who don't, well, that's a little fishy. But anyway, yeah, I just think like that's been the whole thing that's been so interesting to me about AI and where do we see this fitting in our world? Because it is here and it's here to stay. And like you said, small journalism places, you have a small company and you're still trying to make it work. This is what it can be helpful with. But again, we do have to have some guy. He said there's never going to be straightforward like here's guidelines across the board. It's going to have to be each company or each entity has to kind of figure out what do they see as their ethics, and that should be shared with the people who read, watch, listen. I think the audience needs to just know where do you stand with it.
Yeah, well, we definitely, I would say, are going to be clear with our ethics in terms of how we engage with this technology and where we draw lines, et cetera, as we talk to more and more people.
Hmm.
Um, and perhaps help differentiate between journalists and news influencers, where so many people go to get their information from these days.
Journalists and news influencers and also content creators who do not associate as journalists or news
Hmm.
influencers and but people go to for news, and
Hmm.
that's a whole nother thing. Again, how beholden are you to the people you're talking to or you're speaking to, of giving them correct information, of giving them honest information.
I mean, we should hope, but of course, that's something else that we will see.
And it also changes the workforce too, right? Like how people get hired and how, you know, what's
Well, yeah,
going
if
on in
more and
terms of.
more of the public attention is turning to different platforms for different people to work with, then that almost incentivizes for more newsrooms to contract out, perhaps, with content creators who already have this large audience, as opposed to in-house people who they've built up and developed, and also pay a salary and a pension and excuse me, nobody gets pension anymore, a salary and, contribute to their retirement and pay for health insurance and all that, all those other things. Um, one is way cheaper than the other, and economics will be the name of the game for journalism going forward.
Hmm. It will. I mean, and it's that way right now for, I guess, every field too, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, but I'm only an ex, well, I was gonna say
Well,
I'm only an expert in one of them.
but isn't that, it's interesting. We were talking about when we were talking about pay, and there was a similar situation that's going on in terms of the cutting room floor podcast, right? There
Hmm.
was that story that came up on TikTok, and we were talking about this, Jenna. Do you want to give
Yeah,
a?
so very quickly, there was a way more popular podcast than ours, called The Cutting Room Floor. And all due respect, because first of all, I discovered this podcast through TikTok and the controversy. And I learned the backstory of how the originator, the creator of the podcast, basically had something that, she had built up and developed an audience with and decided, you know what, I'm just going to put it on Patreon and then just got subscribers. And that was how it grew. Now, of course, her podcast is about fashion, um, not journalism, which I guess is like, I don't know, depressing or something. But the point is, uh, she put on TikTok a video advertising a job for in New York City for 5 days a week in office for $55,000 a year without benefits. People flipped out online about this job offer. And it opened up this whole new discussion about how the creative fields, and yes, journalism is part of the creative fields, how they often have barriers to entry, and those barriers can often be how low entry level salaries are. And yeah, for myself, I was, a freelancer and I didn't really know how to be a freelancer, but I was freelancing in news radio for years before I finally got a salaried position. And even that was still laughably low by New York City standards.
I mean, I listen, when I started out too, I mean, I even growing within the field of cable news, it was never lucrative. I mean, yes, it was years ago. Um, the industry, I always feel like the media industry has always been a lot, for the most part, your early part of the career has always been low paying. And you were lucky if you did get benefits. I mean, a lot of people, that's why a lot of people freelance, and you're getting a little bit more with if you're freelancing. But I mean, just looking at the situation of the cutting room floor, like now Rachel Amandi, like she's the host, like, right? She's the host and creator of it. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like
Mm-hmm.
she, I felt like part of the thing that threw this whole, made this whole story even bigger than it was, had it just been a listing, I just don't know if it would have caught the same
A lot of
heat.
people said that it was the coming to TikTok, it was her delivery.
It was yes.
Yeah, that
That's to me
set a
what
lot of people off.
that to me is what I think. It's almost like you put something on video, it's already going to be, especially if it's about a job listing. I think it gets to people get to question it differently. Like you're speaking to a whole new medium. I get it. It's great. And you get different people. You're speaking to your audience and the people you actually want to sort of reach. The problem is, yes, delivery, even if you don't think it's a big deal, um,
You
it can be
can't
interpreted.
really, yeah, the delivery was much more like boss to employee. And this was also very much a read the room kind of situation because if you spend any time on social media, particularly TikTok, you would know that a lot of people are really struggling in this job market
Hmm.
and really, but also at the same time, reassessing what their work life balance is, what their, boundaries are, what their, expectations were. And so the delivery just came across incredibly insensitive. I've since heard the podcast did do a follow-up episode where they
She did.
addressed, yeah. So I think it was, I think, like, okay, we're just going to take this down and reassess how we um, go looking to fill this position. Someone else said this was something that would have been much better done through a hiring or, an agency that does hiring for you. But yeah, I think it's also another example of when you are like we are building a small business. Yeah, there's bumps, there's mistakes that are going to be
Yeah.
made. But again, like any good journalist, if a retraction is needed, a correction needs to be
Yes.
made, you get out and you make it. And it seems like that's what's happened.
Yeah. And I think, again, it starts this conversation of what's a livable wage. And, I think you have people who, what would have been a livable wage maybe 10, 15 years ago. Some people
Uh,
look and say, this does not feel as livable in 2025.
it was
But,
tight because I'll be
but
honest, I had that my first
yes,
salary job. That was my salary, that 55,000. And that was, oh my God. Oh my, oh sorry. I just quickly did the math in my head. Okay, that was like 15 years ago. But
yeah,
but still though, no, but even 15 years ago in the New York City area, that was tight.
that's tight. And that's what I mean. Like people have this, where, but at the same point, you got to think here's the same thing, right? Like small company
Hmm.
doesn't have the same resources, doesn't have the same budget as a
Hmm.
bigger company, and therefore is like you're going to be. I mean, and I listen. I understand how the job was sort of described. Didn't sound like maybe some people were saying it really was just a glorified personal assistant, and it was. But at the same point, I do think you have to really be careful about what people get out of it. So if I'm not getting paid as much, but if I know that I'm working in a positive or I
Yeah.
get it, high pressure environment. We work in the industry. People have to know that people sometimes have, listen, you work in a high pressure environment. Some people are going to like go off. Stuff does happen. There's got to be a respect issue, but like the industry is what it is. I do think there just has to be a respect and knowing that what am I getting out of it? If it's not the pay, am I getting a skill set? Am I meeting people? Am I making connections? Am I making really good choices in terms of networking? Am I meeting the right people? Because that might be worth it, because you
I
leave
mean,
that job and you
50-50
get something
because
else.
I did have like, listen, my first job in the industry, I worked myself till I made myself sick. And I did meet people that led to my next job, which was another freelancing gig.
Hmm.
Um, but at the same time, I will say that I'm not sure that there are aspects of the, I guess, maybe high pressure. Like, again, I can't speak to fashion. I can only speak to journalism.
Hmm.
Like, when news breaks, that's just a situation of what it
Hmm.
is. But does it have to be, uh, can it change? I think is one of the other questions that's being posed right now is that do we have to work in the same way that we did? Do we have to like, you know, be available 24/7, which I remember doing that. I know you remember doing that where like,
Yeah.
you're getting emails and phone calls and whatever on weekends and you're constantly checking in and all of that other stuff. Like, should that be normalized or not? And if it's not going to be normalized, then isn't there an understanding that there's some things we're going to miss, that we're not going to be able to lead everything on? And if we want to lead on everything, maybe we just need more people to cover around the clock. Like all of these, I think, are questions that are being reassessed and where can we cut back and, what is necessary and what's not.
Yeah. I think, this is the part of it that, yeah, it's how do we move forward? Things are changing. And I don't, you know, like you said, I can't speak to the fashion industry, but she's also a podcast, and it is the fashion industry too. Like it's a melding of a few different worlds in there. And to be real, when you work in this space of media, there's always a deadline, right?
Oh,
It
yeah.
it might be different in the sense that we're talking about breaking news. Well, they're talking maybe sometimes like there's a fashion show going on, or guess what? We have this. we're with this designer, or we are
Or we
working on
have
this,
this guest and they
or
only
we have,
have
and then you
now
have,
to talk to it, and we got to get everything together to get this guest on or
and,
whatever and make sure
and
this
I
show
get
is
it.
aired. Yeah, like
It's this, there's
there
real
are pressure
deadlines.
aspects to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And does the pay match that? I think that's a whole debate, but I do think like there's got to be also an openness, and it also has to be done in a way that isn't, if you're communicating this on video, good, that's good for you. But I do think, we have to be careful of um, how we do that. And I find it just interesting, like, when we're talking about just the journalism industry too, like one thing that sort of has popped up, and we've been talking about this, is the new Peacock series, The Paper, which is
Yeah.
by one of the creators of The Office, which we are going to be kind of doing a recapping of sorts, I think, of the
I'd say a
series.
review from the
A review,
perspective
a
of journalists
review.
who've worked in local newsrooms. I'm sure there's going to be, my God, I'm sure journalism is going to be like, well, here are the following things that weren't correct or something like that in the show, because we journalists love to find fault and stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about it because, we've seen some of the episodes already, and there's a lot that I really like. There is some stuff that I'm just like, well, that never happened when I was working.
Yeah,
But again,
it's
it's a sitcom. It's not, it's a mockumentary sitcom. It's not an actual documentary of a newsroom.
yeah, it's
So
similar to The Office in the sense, although that definitely was, it was different because this is actually an industry where they really are able to, it's a little bit bigger than a paper company.
exactly.
So,
Well, I mean, it's a different kind of paper company, as
true.
we'll get into it, but yeah, the intro definitely indicates that, yeah, newspapers aren't really the kind of paper in people's lives that they used to be.
Well, Jenna, I am super stoked about this new season that we have of the show and different things we're going to be bringing out. Again, talking about AI, looking at, of course, the stories that we always cover in terms of taking people into the world of journalism, and doing something new here by doing this sort of review of the paper with Peacock and looking at these things. And I'm excited. And I want to say, please, people, be kind. It was my first taping in a long time. I feel like today was like, it was a little rough, but I'm trying. It's just getting used to. You're used to like just jumping right back into
Yes.
this, and for me,
Well,
it's sort of
also,
like,
shameless plug here, but I never really stopped because
I
I've been
know,
hosting that show on
I know.
BAI. So yeah, it's no, trust me, as weird as it may sound to people who are just like, psh, whatever, like a podcast, you just get on a mic and talk. No, there's a skill set to hosting and driving a conversation.
So it's been really. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff happening. I'm super stoked.
Exactly. All right. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for coming back for season 3. We've got a lot planned, so can't wait to share it with you all. Laid Off and Looking is an independent podcast conceived of and created by Jenna Flanagan and Domenic Camia.
Music provided by Jake Howitt. Research by Lori Rothenbucker.
You can watch and follow us on YouTube.
Or you can listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you have any questions or suggestions, we want to hear from you. So leave a comment.
We do check them.
Or reach out to us anytime at laidofandlookingpod@gmail.com.
New episodes every Friday.